Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
But who is he?
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
And who is he?
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
And what he do?
And it's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to a fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers with a Melly update. As you guys know, our content genius is behind the camera, behind the microphone, behind everything I do. I owe all my success to him, Michael Rivers. So today we're reacting to Monday, what happened yesterday in the trial of state of Florida versus Jamel Demons, or Demons. Does it say demons or demons? I'm not sure which. Anyway, YNW Melly. Now, we started up a new week of trial, and guess what? Today does not disappoint. But before we get to that, all right, so I was on my yacht over the weekend, and my grandma, you know, God bless her, she's just the nicest lady. She got sober, and as a thank you for her getting off of methamphetamine and getting out of my basement, thank God, we decided to get her a jet ski. And so, you know, she can't really go to the dealership. So we had them e-sign us a purchase agreement, which we did. And we downloaded the app. You got 3 free signatures. And now Grandma goes like crazy on the jet ski. So we were able to complete that transaction quickly. And we also did the same thing with the bank. We got a loan at the bank. We e-signed. Everything was cool. If you have an agreement that you need signed quickly, I use it all the time for retainer agreements, and sometimes people can't come into the office for whatever reason. You e-sign. If it's not e-sign, nobody signs. All right, so that's our ESign ad for today. So Travion Glass, and that's kind of a cool name, Travion Glass. He testified in Melly's trial today. Now, if you remember, they had rented a studio for 12 hours, and Williams and Thomas were there. That's Sack Chaser and Juvie. They were there, and so was Melly, and so was Bortland. What makes Glass's testimony important is the fact that he testified today that he saw that Melly changed his clothes. We'll talk more about that, what that forensically means. But let's...
You're wearing in the photograph.
Sure. What shirt?
Okay. So after the hospital, you went to Frito's house.
To the best of my knowledge.
Okay. And what were you doing at the house?
This is another reason why he's a critical witness, because this is so a witness who's actually spent some time with them in the moments before the killing.
Still grieving.
Okay.
And he's talking about he's grieving the loss of his 2 friends because he had been recording with one of them prior to this.
Who took you to the hospital?
The cameraman.
Okay, do you recall his name?
Drew.
Right. And do you recall who took you from the hospital to Frito's house?
Same person.
All right. And before you left for the hospital, or actually, who went to the hospital with you and Drew?
Just Drew.
Okay. Who was at the house, Melly's house?
And so he's like 3 steps removed because he goes to the hospital, but he goes with the cameraman. He's not part of the crew.
Before you left for the hospital.
Same people that was there when we got there.
Okay, and same people being the 4 people that entered the Mitsubishi?
Yes.
Okay. So you're at Frito's house. You mentioned, and I forgot exactly where you were in the house. Did you say where you were?
Drew was wrong.
No. Not Melly's house. Frito's house. Where were you in Frito's house?
Outside.
Okay. And who was at Frito's house when you first got there?
Everybody that wasn't at the house.
Okay. And it's because I don't know who.
Okay, what an answer that is. Who was at Frito's house after everybody that wasn't at the house?
Everybody was or is. Can you please specify?
In other words, what are the names of the people that were at the house?
Kobe, Melly.
The
only people I can remember.
Okay. Was that the first time you saw Melly after you guys left the studio?
Yeah.
Was Melly wearing the same clothes or different clothes than when you saw him at the studio?
It was a new day. Nah, he wasn't.
Nah, he wasn't.
All right. So he's wearing something at the studio. The murder happens. Then after the murder, they're at Frida's house, and he's wearing something different. Here's why that's important. If you remember where Melly was sitting, he's in the rear driver's side seat. Okay? So you're like, this is very close quarters. You're in an enclosed vehicle. You've got one person sitting right next to you, and you got another person sitting in the passenger seat in the front. When you fire a round in an enclosed car and it hits somebody, it's going to spray blood on you. Same with the front seat. It's still going to get blowback. You're going to get some material on you for sure. And so he knows that, and that's likely why he changed his clothes, according to the prosecution. That's the prosecution's theory for sure. And it's a pretty good one.
You guys
Wasn't wearing the same clothes.
Okay. Do you recall what he was wearing?
Just had on some shorts.
And how long did you stay at Frito Bain's house?
I don't know.
All right. Minutes, hours, days?
He's a reluctant witness, but he brings out a very, very important fact. And that goes to consciousness of guilt.
30 minutes, could be hours.
Okay. So not days.
Not even a day.
Okay. And so when you got to Frito's house, was it light or dark outside?
It's like,
And you previously said
Now, it's light outside, but remember that the murder supposedly happened around 4:30 or thereabouts in the morning. So it would be dark and then just about to start getting light in about an hour and a half or so.
yourself and Melly and someone else was at Frito's house. Was Frito there as well?
I think I did see him. I don't remember.
Okay. What happens while you're there? Like you're there, you're outside, what happens?
Greeting.
Okay. And you're grieving, are you grieving alone?
Yes.
Are you at the house, at any point in time, do more people come to the house or do people leave the house?
If they did come, I don't know. I was in the back.
Okay.
I was back there breathing.
At any point in time, did Melly leave Frito's house?
It came to a point when I was there by myself.
All right. So you were there by
So that means Melly must have left.
yourself. So the people that you previously said were there were no longer there, correct?
Right.
And so do you know where they went during that time?
I don't.
All right. And we're still talking about October 26th of 2018, correct?
Yes.
And this would be shortly after the hospital?
Yes.
All right. At some point, does Melly come back to Frito's house?
Around this time, still grieving and getting a little, I don't know. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I guess Melly comes back.
Yeah, I guess they come back.
Right.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay. And at some point, does Melly leave again, a second time?
I don't remember anything farther after that.
All right.
See, he's a real reluctant witness. He remembers he changed clothes. That's a very salient fact. One of the reasons he remembers that is because there's a photograph of him.
Grieving. That was the last thing I remember was me grieving. I ended up in Gifford.
All right. So before you end up in Griffin, if I were to show you a statement, would that refresh your recollection as to Melly leaving and coming back a second time?
So if somebody's having trouble in witness stand remembering, you can ask them, would it refresh your recollection if I showed you your notes, show you your statement, whatever the item happens to be? If they say no, it doesn't matter if I look at that, you're stuck with their answer. But if they say, well, maybe, then you give them the document, they read it. They don't read the document out loud, but they read it to themselves, and then you can get that statement in.
I suppose so.
Under permission to show him his statement again?
Yes, Counsel.
And one of the things, they always have to ask permission from the judge. So if you're going to approach the bench because you want to say something outside the presence of the jury, Your Honor, may I approach the bench? Or if you want to show the witness something, Your Honor, may I approach the witness to show him the transcript?
class. I'm going to give you page 5 and page 6. If you can take a look, you can start in the middle and review those pages and look up when you're done.
So this would have been probably 5 years ago that he gave this statement.
Are you done? Is that a yes?
Yes.
Did that refresh your recollection?
Somewhat.
Okay, so tell us what you somewhat remember.
I just did.
I just did.
If you recall,
You know, it's so fucking frustrating when you're dealing with a witness you know has the information, but they don't want to give it to you. And it can come to a point where the judge will let you lead them. Now, let's talk about that for just a second. Cross-examination is not what we're seeing here. This is direct examination. This is a witness that you call and you have to ask open-ended questions. But if they're completely reluctant or not cooperative and aren't really answering your questions, you can ask the judge to have them declared a hostile witness. In other words, then you can cross-examine them.
you said you weren't sure, you went to Gifford, and then I asked you if your statement would refresh your recollection. Does your statement refresh your recollection as to whether Melly left again?
I'm not sure if they left. I was grieving.
Okay.
I'm not sure what nobody did. I was grieving.
That's not good for her, you know. And the thing is, she should be more streamlined, because when you get an answer like that, you know, you should know what this witness is going to say before they get up there. And you get an answer like that, it makes it look like you're not prepared because you don't know what's going on.
Well, not you mentioned, let's see. I pointed out to you the person that was wearing the jacket that you identified as Melly was carrying something across his side or his back on the video. Do you recall seeing that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall what that's referred to?
A satchel.
Okay. Can it also be commonly referred to?
Objection.
Sustained.
Objection leading. So that's what I was telling you about. You can't lead a witness on direct examination. The question was, can it also be commonly referred to? And you have to give that or lodge that objection immediately, because otherwise she's going to get that word out there, and that lets the witness know what you're trying to ask. So the defense lawyer hopped on it right away. Very good. And the judge sustained the objection. So basically, the reason that was leading is because the answer was going to be in the question, and that's a leading question.
Are you familiar with the term man?
Objection.
Watch him sidebar.
See, now she's going to educate her witness.
Did you see that satchel again after you left the studio? Do you know what was in that satchel?
I don't.
Okay. Do you recall seeing anyone else with a satchel that night at the studio?
It was 5 years ago. I don't recall.
Okay.
That is the danger of taking so long for a case to come to trial. And I think that's one of the reasons why they do depositions, honestly, because you can take somebody's deposition and you have their testimony early on, and then if they have trouble with it, you can read it back or even read it into the record in some cases.
Is there anything that can refresh your recollection as to whether or not anybody else was wearing a satchel?
I suppose so.
If I were to show you the video again, would that refresh your recollection?
I suppose so.
No. Publishing Suite 7.
Now, here's the thing. So he was with them at the studio, right? The morning comes and goes, and then he sees Melly in new clothes. So there's two things that could happen. The prosecution will say that's nefarious because he got blood all over his other clothes and he had to change them. And the defense is going to say, well, it's the dawning of a new day. Don't you change your underpants, Madam Prosecutor? Of course they're going to say that. So they're going through that video again. You know, they're going through the video to show who is sitting where. So you got two things that are coming out of this witness. One, that Melly changed his clothes, which could be evidence of a consciousness of guilt. And then the other thing is, and other witnesses have testified, but they're corroborating, and you build it all together. That's really what they're doing with this. We don't know yet exactly the exact importance of the satchel, right? Could it have contained firearms? I suppose it could have. Williams had the satchel on him getting into the car. Then later, you see Melly with that same satchel on. And that's what those objections were all about.
I'm going to start publishing State 7 at 2:19:01. I'm going to pause at 2:19:13. Does the video refresh your recollection as to anyone else that was carrying a satchel?
Yes.
Who, if anyone, was carrying a satchel?
I see Chris for one.
And that's Christopher Thomas.
Yes.
Did you ever have any business relationship with a person I refer to as Track?
No,
Okay. Do you know who Track is?
not really.
Not really, or
I don't know who he is at all.
do you know of him?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you see Track on October 26th, 20?
So now let's fast forward a little bit. You know, when he's sitting behind that monitor, isn't that just irritating? It's just because you can't see the facial. You know, it's like when they had masks on during COVID. You couldn't see somebody's facial expression. You hide behind a monitor, you can't see your facial expression, and it's difficult to read.
You smoke a lot of marijuana, right?
Now, this is a defense question. Now, you smoke a lot of marijuana, don't you? How they're allowed to ask this is beyond me.
Possibly.
Well, you smoke it anytime you get a chance, I think is how you
Well, I mean, who wouldn't?
phrase it.
It's your answer. Yeah.
That was your answer.
I smoke when I smoke.
You smoke when you smoke?
Yeah.
And when's that?
When I smoke.
And when was that?
When I smoke.
How many times a day?
Objection to ask and answer.
No, it's not answered because he didn't fucking answer the question. Here's the thing. You can ask a question, and then if you try to reemphasize it and ask the same question, if they answered it the first time, you can't ask it again. It's called asked and answered. You can only ask it, but if you ask the question and they don't answer it or give you some bullshit answer that's non-responsive, then you can go ahead and ask the question. And you can also ask the court to admonish the witness to answer the question.
Overruled.
Of course you're going to overrule.
Twice, 3 times, maybe.
Okay.
A lady, 3 times a lady. So he smokes weed 2 to 3 times a day. Now, here's the thing. I don't smoke weed, but I smell it all the time, all over the place. Do people just get high all fucking day? I think they do. They must, because you smell it everywhere. But, I mean, imagine if we did that with alcohol. Like, I'm just going to take a lunch. I mean, they used to do that with alcohol. You know, lawyers used to have a 2-martini lunch, if you remember back in the day, before my time. But imagine with booze. Like, if you were just going to have a, you know, some people have a blunt in their hand all the time. I can't imagine having a beer in my hand all the time.
And on the night before you got to the studio,
So the idea is here, you're smoking weed. You smoke weed a lot. You smoke weed at least 2 to 3 times a day. You can't be trusted to remember a goddamn thing because you were high. But some people who smoke a lot of weed, that's just who they are, and develop a tolerance for it.
on the day in question, you had smoked at least 2 joints, right?
I sure guess.
That's what you said, right?
I don't recall.
Okay. And when
I don't recall. Does that seem genuine to you?
you got to the studio, you were smoking, correct?
Possibly.
Were you or weren't you?
It was 5 years ago.
You forget?
I don't recall.
Okay. And you were drinking
See, he doesn't want to help anybody. He doesn't want to help the defense. He doesn't want to help anybody.
Hennessy, I believe? Or do you not recall that either?
It's possible.
Possible. But you don't recall?
I don't.
Okay. So you don't recall much from that night, do you?
Oh, I don't recall. I don't recall. I don't recall. Well, then how the fuck can you say that he changed his clothes? How do you remember that so clearly, but everything else you can't recall?
Right? Fair?
All right.
Okay. And when you got in the red vehicle and left, you went to sleep in the vehicle when you left the studio. Right?
Yeah, I was just about to have the munchies. You get tired just before you get the munchies.
Yeah.
And you didn't wake up until you got to the guard gate.
I woke up when we came to a stop.
You did not wake up until you got to the guard gate. Am I right or wrong?
I woke up when we came to a stop.
Okay,
Which was at the guard gate, yes.
okay. With respect to your daily,
Consumption,
right?
ingestion.
You never seen Melly with a gun.
Objection, Your Honor.
Abstain.
Move to strike.
Jury disregard last question.
Have you ever seen Melly with a gun?
Objection, Your
I
Honor.
sustain the objection.
So, have you ever seen Melly with a gun? Why is that objectionable? I think it would be more apt to have relevance if it was about that particular night.
And have you ever seen Pratt with a gun?
Possibly.
Everything's possible with this guy. This guy knows no limits. Everything's possible.
It is. Maybe. Maybe so.
You don't know of any friction between Melly and Anthony Davis at any time, Anthony Williams at any time.
Not that I know of.
And you don't know of any friction between Melly and Christopher Thomas at any time.
Not that I know of.
So, the only way you don't ask that question if you don't know what the answer is going to be. So they had to have some inkling what that answer was going to be. But that is excellent because for the defense, it takes away motive. And the state doesn't have to prove motive, but if you can disprove motive, then that could be grounds for an acquittal.
And you don't know of any friction that occurred at the studio that night that would cause anybody to get murdered.
Objection, Your Honor. False speculation.
Sustained.
Basically, what they're trying to do there is they're trying to have Glass pretty much say that there's no beef between these guys. There's nothing that anybody would do that night that would cause somebody to get murdered. And it's trying to get into the head of whoever did this.
Friction at the studio that night of any magnitude?
I did it.
You did?
I didn't.
Okay, you did. With respect to your daily marijuana regimen, did you smoke before you came here today?
I did not.
I sure wish I would have.
I have nothing. Thank you.
I should have.
I should have. That's kind of funny, actually. So this has been our reaction to the Melly update. There's a couple big points that came out of this testimony. One, Melly changed his clothes. Two, the position of where Melly was in the car. It's just corroborates another witness. And what's going to happen with this trial as it goes on and on and on, the prosecutor will come at the same piece of evidence a few different angles. And what they do is they just build this house, and pretty soon, with brick by brick, and pretty soon, before you know it, you've got, a case built. And because they don't have, it's not on video, but there is enough circumstances that they're going to say to justify a guilty verdict. So keep in tune with us. Make sure you subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, sign up for Patreon. And we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, board certified criminal defense lawyer with our content genius, Michael Rivers. Thank you.
Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away.
23-hour lockdown, please, is that my God?